They found Ted Weiher. He had been dead for some time. His beard had grown out to several inches, long enough that investigators estimated he had survived alone in that trailer for somewhere between 6 weeks and 3 months. He had lost approximately 100 pounds. His feet were badly frostbitten. He had no shoes. Behind him, in the storage locker, was enough food to feed all 5 men for more than a year. The propane heater beside him had never been turned on. The matches were where they had always been. The firewood was untouched. Outside, in a shed 10 feet from the trailer door, there was fuel, enough to have kept a fire going through the entire California winter. None of it had been touched. Ted Weiher starved to death, surrounded by everything he needed to live, and nobody has ever been able to explain why. He was 32 years old. He was the oldest of the 5. The night it started, February 24th, 1978, Ted Weiher and 4 of his closest friends had driven 50 miles from their homes in Yuba City, California, to watch a college basketball game. They were, by every account from their families and from the Yuba County Sheriff's Office, in good spirits. They stopped at a convenience store in Chico after the game. Surveillance footage captured all 5 of them there, buying candy and chocolate milk for the drive home. They were seen leaving in the direction of Yuba City. That was the last time anything they did made sense. The 5 men, Ted Weiher, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jackie Huett, and Gary Mathias, had met through a Yuba City nonprofit that ran a basketball program for people with disabilities. Their families called them the Boys. They played together, traveled together, looked out for each other. The night of February 24th was not unusual for them. They had made this drive before. According to reporting by the Washington Post and subsequent coverage by A&E's Cold Case Files, the car, a 1969 turquoise Mercury Montego belonging to Jack Madruga, was found 4 days later by a Forest Service ranger. It was not on the route home. It was not close to the route home. It was on a remote dirt road in the Plumas National Forest, 50 miles in the wrong direction, at an elevation the 5 men had no documented reason to be at, in February, in the middle of a California mountain winter. The car was undamaged. It had a quarter tank of gas. The doors were unlocked. One window was down. The keys were gone. Then Yuba County Sheriff Jack Beecham, in statements made at the time, described the case as, and this is a direct quote, bizarre as hell. That was 1978. It is now 47 years later. 4 of the 5 men have been found. Their remains told investigators almost nothing about what happened on that mountain road, or why they left the car, or how they ended up where they did. The 5th man, Gary Mathias, has never been found at all. What is known is in the documented record. What isn't known is the shape of the case. And the shape of it, after 47 years, is still wrong. To understand what happened to the Yuba County 5, it helps to understand who they were before the mountain. They were not 5 strangers. They were not 5 men who happened to be in the same car. They were 5 friends, close friends, in the specific way that people become close when they find each other through something they love. In their case, that thing was basketball. They had met through the Gateway Gators, a basketball team run out of the Yuba City Vocational Rehabilitation Center, a nonprofit serving adults with disabilities in Yuba County, California. All 5 of them had mild intellectual disabilities or psychiatric conditions of some kind. All 5 of them had found, in the Gateway Gators and in each other, something that mattered to them. They practiced together, they traveled together, they competed together. The night of February 24th, 1978, was not the first time they had driven somewhere together to watch basketball. It was simply the last. Ted Weiher was 32, the oldest of the group by 2 years, and in many ways the emotional center of it. His family has described him in interviews over the decades as gentle and open, the kind of person who greeted strangers on the street with the same warmth he gave people he had known for years. He had worked as a janitor. He was, by his family's account, someone who did not always understand the weight of certain situations. His brother has described an incident, told with the mixture of grief and affection that characterizes most of what the Weiher family has said publicly about Ted, in which Ted told him to let him sleep while their family home was on fire. He was, by every account, someone who trusted the people around him completely. Jack Madruga was 30 years old, and the car was his. The 1969 turquoise Mercury Montego was Jack's, and so was the responsibility of getting the group where they were going. His parents, in interviews cited across the case's documented coverage, described him as a careful and reliable driver. He was not someone who got lost. He was not someone who took unnecessary risks with the car. He knew the route between Yuba City and Chico. They had driven it before, more than once, to follow UC Davis basketball. His parents have said in interviews given over the years that leaving the car unlocked was not like him, that leaving a window down in February in the mountains in the middle of the night was not like him, that whatever happened on that road, whatever decision was made about the car, it was not the kind of decision Jack Madruga would have made on his own. Bill Sterling was 29. He was, by family accounts and subsequent case documentation, the group's navigator. He kept a collection of maps at home. He was good at reading them, better than most of the others. This is a detail worth noting because it became relevant later, when investigators found multiple maps in the glove compartment of the Mercury Montego. The maps were there. Bill Sterling was the one who would have known how to use them. What he made of those maps on the night of February 24th, whether he consulted them, whether he saw something in them that sent the group east instead of south, has never been established. Jackie Huett was 24, the youngest of the five, and Ted Weir's closest friend. He could not read. He could not write. He could not dial a phone. He relied on his parents for almost everything outside the structure of the Gateway Gators program and the friendships he had built within it. He was, by his family's description, someone who felt most himself within the group, within the specific context of these 4 other men who had known him long enough to meet him where he was. His father would later be the one to find his remains. That detail will come later in this telling. It is worth knowing now, in this part of it, when Jackie Huett is still 24 years old, and the night is still young, and the group is still together, and the car is still running, and they are heading, as far as anyone knows, toward home. Gary Mathias was 25, and he was different from the others in ways that matter to this case. He was an Army veteran. He had served in West Germany, where, according to the documented record, he had developed a serious drug problem. He had been discharged. By the time he was back in Yuba City and playing basketball with the Gateway Gators, he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. He was, at the time of the disappearance, supposed to be on medication for it. Whether he was taking his medication on the night of February 24th has never been conclusively established. His family has spoken about this, in interviews over the years, with the kind of careful precision that suggests it was a question investigators asked them more than once. What they have said, generally, is that Gary had been doing well, that he had been stable, that the night of the basketball game was not, to their knowledge, a night when anything was wrong. Gary Mathias is the only one of the 5 who has never been found. His shoes, however, were in the trailer where Ted Weiher died, which means Gary was there, at some point, in some condition, and then was not. On the evening of February 24th, 1978, all 5 of them got into Jack Madruga's Mercury Montego and drove 50 miles north to Chico. The game was at California State University, Chico, Chico State, a campus the men were familiar with from previous trips. The matchup was Chico State against UC Davis. UC Davis was the team the Gateway Gators followed, their team, in the specific way that sports fans claim teams as their own. They had driven this road before. They knew where they were going. They watched the game. UC Davis won. After the game, the 5 men stopped at Bears Market, a convenience store in Chico. This stop is documented. Surveillance footage captured all 5 of them there, moving through the store, buying what they bought: candy, chocolate milk, snacks for the drive. By the account of everyone who knew them, this was exactly the kind of thing they did after a game. The footage showed them, according to reporting from All That's Interesting and the A&E Cold Case Files documentary, appearing cheerful. They were seen leaving the store heading in the direction of Yuba City. That was the last documented image of all 5 men alive. What should have happened next was simple. The drive from Chico to Yuba City runs south through the Sacramento Valley. Flat agricultural country, well-lit highways, a route the 5 men had driven before. Under normal conditions, it takes roughly an hour. There was nothing about the night up to this point that should have complicated it. The game had gone well. The snacks were bought. The car was running. But the car did not go south. At some point after leaving Bears Market, at some point on a road they knew, heading toward home, the Mercury Montego turned east, into the Sierra Nevada foothills, into the mountains, into the Plumas National Forest, onto roads that had nothing to do with the route between Chico and Yuba City, in a direction that made no sense given where they were trying to go. Nobody has ever established when this turn happened. Nobody has ever established why. The families noticed the next morning. All 5 men lived at home with their families. This is important context, not incidental detail. They were adults, all of them, ranging from 24 to 32, but they were adults who maintained close daily contact with their parents, their siblings, the people who looked after them. When they did not come home on the night of February 24th, their families noticed immediately. By the morning of February 25th, parents were calling each other, were calling around, were calling anyone who might know where the boys had gone. None of them had heard anything. None of them had any indication of where the car might be. The families reported the men missing that morning. The geography of the search that followed was, initially, wrong, because no one yet knew the car had gone east instead of south. Search efforts focused on the route the men should have taken, the route between Chico and Yuba City through the Sacramento Valley, the route they knew. The car was not on that route. It was found on February 27th, 3 days after the men had last been seen, by a Forest Service ranger making a routine check of roads in the Plumas National Forest. The Mercury Montego was on the Oroville-Quincy Highway, a remote mountain road that had no business being on the itinerary of 5 men driving home from a basketball game in Chico. It was lightly stuck in a snowbank on the side of the road, not deeply embedded, not damaged. According to the Washington Post's coverage and the subsequent A&E documentation of the case, 5 grown men could have pushed it free without significant effort. They had not pushed it free. The car was examined, quarter tank of gas, multiple maps in the glove compartment, doors unlocked. 1 window down, in February, at elevation, in the mountains. The undercarriage was examined. No damage, no dents, no marks consistent with a difficult or reckless drive up the rutted mountain road. A search of the surrounding area began immediately. It was February. The snowpack was heavy. The temperatures at that elevation, at night, were well below freezing. The terrain was dense conifer forest, interrupted by mountain meadows and creek drainage. The kind of country where a person could be 50 yards off a road and invisible. The search found nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no indication of which direction the men had gone when they left the car. 2 days later, a winter storm moved through the area. The search was suspended. The 5 men were somewhere in the Plumas National Forest, in February, in the mountains, in conditions that did not favor survival. And they had been there, by then, for at least 3 days. There was one witness. His name was Joseph Shones. He was a local man who had been on that same mountain road on the night of February 24th, the same night the 5 men had disappeared. He came forward after the car was found, and what he said has been a central piece of the case's documented record ever since. Complicated, disputed, impossible to fully dismiss, and impossible to fully accept. Shones told investigators he had been driving on the Oroville-Quincy Highway that night when he began experiencing chest pains. What he believed at the time was a cardiac event. He pulled over. He could not drive. He was, by his own account, in significant physical distress for most of the night. What he reported seeing from his car was this: headlights, voices, a group of people near a vehicle he could not fully identify in the dark. He called out for help. The group, he said, went silent when he called. The voices stopped. The activity stopped. Whatever was happening near that vehicle, it stopped when a stranger called out from the darkness. He said he saw a woman in the group. He said he thought he saw a baby. He said, approximately 2 hours later, he saw flashlight beams in the area again, but no one came to him. In the morning, when he had recovered enough to attempt to get help, the Mercury Montego was in the spot where he had seen the group the night before. Shones's account has been examined carefully in the decades since. His reliability is, in the documented record, explicitly disputed. He was in cardiac distress. He was alone, at night, at elevation, in significant pain. Whether what he saw was the 5 men, whether the group near the car was them or someone else, or a combination of both, has never been established. Whether the woman and the baby he reported were real has never been established. No woman and no baby connected to the case have ever been identified. What his account does establish, if it is accepted as broadly accurate, is that the 5 men, or people near their car, were on that road on the night of February 24th, that they had flashlights, that when a stranger called out for help, they went silent and did not respond. Why 5 men would ignore a stranger calling for help in the dark, in the mountains, in February, is one of the questions this case has never answered. The snow came down. The search stopped. The mountain kept what it had. For 4 more months, it kept all of it. The snow melted in June. It had been 4 months since the 5 men had driven east into the mountains instead of south toward home. 4 months since the Mercury Montego had been found on the Oroville-Quincy Highway with its window down and its keys missing. 4 months since the search had been suspended and the mountain had been left to hold whatever it was holding. On June 4th, 1978, a group of motorcyclists were riding trails in the Plumas National Forest when they came across a United States Forest Service trailer, a remote outpost ordinarily used by fire crews during the summer season. The trailer had a broken front window. One of the motorcyclists tried the door. It opened. The smell reached them before anything else did. Inside, on a bed, wrapped in several layers of sheets and blankets, was a man. He was emaciated, reduced by the time they found him to something that bore little physical resemblance to the person he had been in February. His beard had grown to a length that suggested months of survival, not days. Investigators would later estimate, based on the beard growth and the condition of the body, that Ted Weiher had survived alone in that trailer for somewhere between 6 and 13 weeks after the 5 men had last been seen. He had lost approximately 100 pounds. His feet were severely frostbitten. He had no shoes, not his own shoes, not anyone else's. On the bedside table beside him, his ring, his necklace, his wallet, and a gold watch that belonged to none of the 5 men. It has never been identified. The person it belonged to has never come forward. Behind Ted Weiher, in the storage locker built into the trailer wall, was food. Not a small amount of food. Not a few cans of something left by the previous season's fire crew. According to the documented record, the A&E Cold Case Files investigation, the Washington Post coverage, and the subsequent reporting by outlets including All That's Interesting, the locker contained enough provisions to have fed all 5 men for more than a year. There were sea ration cans. There was dehydrated food. There were supplies of the kind that Forest Service crews stock for extended deployments in remote terrain. Some of the sea ration cans had been opened. They had been opened with a P-38 military can opener, the kind issued to Army personnel. Gary Mathias was the only veteran among the 5. The dehydrated food had not been touched. The rest of the locker, the bulk of a year's worth of provisions, was untouched. In the shed 10 feet from the trailer door, there was fuel. There was a propane tank. There was a butane supply. There were heating materials sufficient to have maintained warmth in that trailer through the entire California mountain winter. The lock on the shed was intact when investigators arrived. It had not been forced. It had not been opened. Inside the trailer itself, there was a fireplace. There were matches. There was paper. The kind of fire-starting materials that a person alone in a cold trailer in a California mountain winter with frostbitten feet and failing body weight would have had every reason to use. There was no ash in the fireplace. No fire had ever been lit. The propane heater in the trailer had never been turned on. This is the documented fact that has defined how this case is understood, or rather, how it fails to be understood, in the 47 years since. Ted Weiher was alive in that trailer for up to 3 months. He was cold enough that his feet were destroyed by frostbite. He was hungry enough that he lost 100 pounds despite the food behind him. He had matches. He had paper. He had a fireplace. He had a propane heater that required nothing more than being switched on. He did not switch it on. He did not light a fire. He did not eat the food behind him, beyond the sea rations that had been opened, and those may not have been opened by Ted at all. The P-38 can opener that opened them was military issue. Ted Weiher had not served in the military. Gary Mathias had. What happened in that trailer, who was there, in what order, doing what, is one of the things the documented record cannot establish with certainty. What it can establish is the outcome. Ted Weiher died there. He died cold and starving in a structure that contained everything required to prevent both. Nobody has ever explained why. Mathias's shoes were in the trailer. Gary Mathias, the one man among the 5 who has never been found, the Army veteran with schizophrenia who may or may not have been on his medication, the man whose P-38 can opener may have opened those sea ration cans, had been in that trailer at some point. His shoes were there. His presence was documented by what he left behind. But Gary Mathias was not in the trailer when the motorcyclists found it in June. He was not found in the surrounding area. He was not found anywhere. What the shoes mean, whether Gary left the trailer voluntarily, whether he was capable of leaving, whether something or someone moved him, whether he left before Ted died or after, is unknown. The shoes are the case's most specific evidence of Gary's presence and the most specific evidence of his absence simultaneously. They are there. He is not. Ted Weir's own shoes were missing. This is a detail the documented record notes without resolving. Ted had no shoes when he was found. Gary's shoes were present but unworn, present as if set down, not as if discarded. Ted's shoes were absent entirely. Whether Ted's shoes were somewhere in the surrounding terrain, whether they were taken, whether they were lost in the process of whatever journey brought him to that trailer, has never been established. The shoe exchange, if it was an exchange, implies something about what happened in that trailer that the rest of the evidence cannot clarify. It implies, at minimum, that more than one person was there at some point, that things moved, that the trailer was not simply a place Ted Weiher found and collapsed in. It was a place where something occurred, over some period of time, that left specific physical traces and no explanation. The days after the trailer discovery produced more recoveries and more questions. Search teams returned to the area with the snow gone, able to cover ground that had been inaccessible in February and March. Within days of finding Ted Weiher, they found the remains of 2 more of the 5 men. Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling were found approximately 11 miles from where the car had been abandoned, on the side of a road, in terrain consistent with men who had been walking and had stopped. Their bodies had been heavily scavenged by animals over the 4 months since February. Cause of death could not be definitively established. What remained of them was not sufficient for the kind of forensic determination that a more intact recovery would have permitted. The car keys were in Jack Madruga's pocket. He had walked 11 miles through a California mountain winter, in February, in whatever he had been wearing when he left the car, and he had the keys in his pocket the entire time. The car with the quarter tank of gas, the car that started when investigators hot-wired it, the car that could have driven all 5 of them back down the mountain. Its keys were on the body of the man who owned it, 11 miles away, having apparently never been used to start it again after the car was left in the snowbank. Why Jack Madruga walked away from his own car holding the keys has never been explained. Jackie Huett's remains were found not long after. He was located approximately 2 miles from the USFS trailer, closer to the trailer than to the car. His spine was found first. His skull was discovered 100 yards away. His shoes were with the portion of his remains that investigators initially located. It was Jackie Huett's father who found him. The Yuba County Sheriff's Office cold case investigator Brian Bernardus has described this in interviews given to ABC 10 in Sacramento. Described it with the specific, careful weight of someone who has worked this case for years and who understands that certain facts about it do not require elaboration to land. He said it was probably the most tragic part of the whole thing. That Jackie's father found not his son, but a very small portion of his son and some clothing, and that this was how the family learned where Jackie had ended up. Jackie Huett could not dial a phone. He could not read a street sign. He could not, in the documented understanding of who he was, have navigated those mountains alone. He was 2 miles from a trailer where one of his closest friends had spent months dying alone. Whether he knew that, whether he had been there and left, whether he died trying to reach it or trying to leave it, is not known. Gary Mathias was not found. Search parties covered the terrain around the car, around the trailer, along the routes between them. Sightings were reported in the months after. Multiple reported observations of a man matching Gary's description in various locations around Northern California. None of them were confirmed. None of them produced Gary Mathias. His stepfather, in interviews given after the recovery of the other 4 men, said something that has stayed in the documented record of this case ever since. He said he believed the reason the men in that trailer did not light a fire was that they were afraid of being found. Afraid of being found. Not lost, not confused, not incapacitated by cold or hunger or the specific vulnerabilities that each of these 5 men carried into those mountains. Afraid. Deliberately not lighting a fire because a fire would produce smoke, and smoke would produce discovery, and discovery was something they were trying to avoid. The stepfather did not specify who they were afraid of. He did not name anyone. He did not provide evidence. He stated it as his belief in an interview, and it has remained in the record as exactly that. One family member's interpretation of what the physical evidence suggested to him. But it is worth sitting with, because the alternative, that Ted Weiher, alone in a trailer for up to 3 months, with food and fuel and matches around him, chose not to use any of it out of confusion or incapacity alone, requires its own explanation. And that explanation has never been provided either. The case had, from the beginning, attracted theories. Some of them were straightforward. built from the documented record of what was found and where. Some of them extended beyond the documented record into territory that cannot be confirmed and will not be adopted here. What the documented record supports is a set of specific questions, each of which has remained open for 47 years. The first question is the direction of the car. Jack Madruga knew the route home. He had driven it before. The Sacramento Valley route, south from Chico through flat agricultural country, was not complicated. Something caused the Mercury Montego to go east instead of south into the mountains, onto a road Madruga had no documented reason to know. Whether that something was a decision made inside the car or a direction given from outside it, or a combination of both, has never been established. Madruga's mother told reporters, in interviews given after the recovery of her son's remains, that there was some force that made them go up there, that they would not have fled into the woods like a bunch of quail, that somebody made them do it. She did not specify who. She did not provide evidence. She stated it as her belief, as a mother who knew her son and who knew that what the evidence showed was not consistent with who he was. The second question is Joseph Shones. Shones came forward with a specific account of a specific night. Parts of his account have been corroborated by the physical record. The car was where he said it was. The time frame aligns with the documented disappearance. Parts of his account have not been corroborated at all. The woman, the baby, the specific behavior of the group when he called out for help. A subsequent deep analysis of the Shones account, published on Veriark, a case research platform, raised a series of specific questions about his reliability that investigators working the case have never publicly answered. Whether full interview records for Shones exist across the 3 counties with jurisdiction in this case. Whether his account changed between interviews. Whether there was contemporaneous medical documentation of the cardiac event he described. None of these questions have been answered publicly. What remains is a witness whose account places people near the car on the night in question, whose specific details cannot be confirmed, whose reliability is explicitly disputed, and whose story is the closest thing this case has to an eyewitness account of what happened on that mountain road. The third question is Gary Mathias. His schizophrenia diagnosis, his history with drugs, his army background. These have all been incorporated into various theories about what happened. The most discussed among them is the possibility that Gary, off his medication or in some altered state, somehow led or directed the group east instead of south. That whatever happened in that car was shaped, at least in part, by Gary's mental state on that night. His family has pushed back on this, has said in various interviews over the years that Gary had been stable, that the night of the basketball game was not a night when anything was wrong with him. Gary's sister Tammy has said she later visited the trailer and found handwritten notes she believed were Gary's, journal entries, she thought, written during whatever time he spent in that structure. She said she had the notes compared to Gary's handwriting by a specialist and that they were confirmed as a match. Those notes have not been made public. Their contents have not been described in detail in any documented source this telling has been able to verify. They exist in the public record of this case as something Gary's sister described, not as something investigators have confirmed or incorporated into the official case file. The fourth question is the gold watch. On the bedside table in the USFS trailer, alongside Ted Weir's ring and wallet and necklace, was a watch. A gold Waltham watch. It belonged to none of the 5 men. It has never been traced to any owner. The person who left it on that table, whether they left it deliberately, whether they left it in the process of leaving the trailer in a hurry, whether they left it because they were not able to leave with it, has never been identified. A watch on a bedside table implies someone who was there long enough to take it off. Someone who set it down in the way a person sets something down when they are settling in, not passing through. Someone who was in that trailer in a way that suggested some degree of comfort or familiarity with the space. That person has never been identified. After 47 years, the watch remains the most specific, unresolved physical evidence in the entire case. There is a fifth question that the documented record raises and does not answer, and it is in some ways the simplest one. The Special Olympics tournament was the next morning. All 5 men had their uniforms laid out on their beds at home, laid out the night before, in preparation for a tournament they were determined to compete in. They were athletes. The Gateway Gators were their team. The tournament mattered to them. Their families have said, in interviews over the decades, that there was nothing, no circumstance they could imagine, no distraction or detour or misadventure they could conceive of, that would have caused these 5 men to willingly miss that tournament. They missed it. Whatever happened between Bears Market in Chico and the Oroville-Quincy Highway in the Plumas National Forest was powerful enough to override the thing these 5 men had been looking forward to most. 5 sets of uniforms laid out on 5 beds that nobody ever came home to wear. This is not a theory. It is a documented fact about who these men were and what they valued, set against the documented fact of where they ended up. The distance between those two things has never been closed. If you drive the Oroville-Quincy Highway today, it looks the way it looked in February of 1978. The road still winds east into the Sierra Nevada foothills from the valley floor. The conifers still press in from both sides, dense, dark, indifferent to the season. In winter, the snowpack still closes the higher elevations to casual traffic. The USFS trailer, or one like it, in the same general area, still sits somewhere in that forest, the way fire crew outposts do, waiting for the summer season and the people who need them. There is no marker for what happened there. There is no sign on the Oroville-Quincy Highway indicating that 5 men from Yuba City drove up it one February night and did not come back. The road does not carry what happened to it visibly. It is just a road into mountains that most people have no reason to take. Jack Madruga had no reason to take it either. The years after 1978 did not produce answers. They produced more questions, more theories, and the specific kind of accumulated grief that attaches itself to cases that stay open long enough to become part of a family's entire adult life. The Weiher family, Ted's family, has spoken publicly over the decades with a consistency that suggests people who have made peace with not knowing while never fully accepting it. Dallas Weiher, Ted's nephew, has described his 12th birthday as, in his own words, just a house full of sad people. The discovery of Ted's body had come 5 days before. The birthday happened inside that grief. Dallas Weiher has carried that specific memory for more than 4 decades. The Madruga family has never fully accepted the idea that Jack drove that car east voluntarily. His mother's statement that some force made them go up there, that they would not have fled into the woods like a bunch of quail, has been cited in coverage of this case for 47 years, because it has never been refuted by anything in the documented record. It remains, as of this telling, a mother's account of who her son was, set against physical evidence that cannot be reconciled with who her son was. Jackie Huett's father found his son's remains in the summer of 1978. This is a fact that the documented record states plainly, and that this telling will also state plainly, because it does not require elaboration. A father searched for his son. He found what the mountain had left of him. He identified his son by a small portion of remains and some clothing. Jackie Huett could not dial a phone. He could not read. He could not, in the understanding of everyone who knew him, have navigated those mountains alone. His father knew all of this. He went into those mountains anyway, as part of the search effort, because the alternative was not going. What Jackie Huett's father carried out of that forest in the summer of 1978 has never been publicly described in detail. What he carried with him afterward, for the rest of his life, as a father who found his son in pieces in the Plumas National Forest, is not in any document. Gary Mathias has never been found. In the months after the other 4 men were recovered, reported sightings of Gary continued to surface. People called in. People wrote letters. People said they had seen a man matching his description in towns across Northern California, in grocery stores, on street corners, at bus stations. None of the sightings were confirmed. None of them produced Gary Mathias. He would be 72 years old today. The Yuba County Sheriff's Office continues to list Gary Mathias as a missing person. He is not listed as deceased. He is listed as missing. A 25-year-old man, 5 feet 10 inches tall, 170 pounds, last seen in the Plumas National Forest in the winter of 1978. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has not, to this telling's knowledge, produced an age progression image for Gary, partly because the category of his case remains, officially, missing rather than deceased. He is the only one of the 5 who falls into that category. His shoes are in the documented record of the trailer. His possible journal entries are in his sister's account. His presence in that structure at some point is as close to confirmed as anything in this case gets. His subsequent location is entirely unknown. The theories have not resolved in 47 years. They have accumulated. The most widely discussed theory, the one that has the most traction in the documented record, among family members and investigators alike, is that something happened at the basketball game or in the parking lot afterward. That the 5 men encountered someone, or saw something, or were approached in a way that set in motion whatever came next. Ted Weir's sister-in-law has said, in interviews cited across the case's coverage, that she believes they saw something at that game, at the parking lot, that they might have seen it and not even realized they had seen it. This theory does not specify what they saw. It does not name anyone. It suggests, without evidence that can be documented, that the event that redirected these 5 men from the route home to a mountain road in the Plumas National Forest began before they got back in the car. This theory is consistent with the physical evidence in one specific way. It explains the direction of the car without requiring that Jack Madruga, a careful driver who knew the route home, made a navigational error of 50 miles in the wrong direction on a road he had no reason to know. It explains the turn east as something other than confusion. It does not explain what happened after the turn, or in the trailer, or to Gary Mathias. A second theory centers on Gary Mathias himself. Gary had schizophrenia. He had a history of drug use. He had been in the army and had come back from it changed, in ways his family has described as significant. Whether he was on his medication the night of February 24th has never been conclusively established. His family says he was stable. The documented record does not contradict this, but it also does not confirm it. This theory holds that Gary, in some altered or destabilized state, directed or influenced the group's movement that night. That the turn east was his decision, or his suggestion, or the result of something he said or did in the car that the other 4 men, who trusted each other, who deferred to each other, who had built their friendships around a specific kind of mutual reliance, responded to in the way they always responded to each other. The problem with this theory is that it does not explain the car's undercarriage. The Mercury Montego was driven carefully up that rutted mountain road, carefully enough that there was no damage to the undercarriage when investigators examined it. That kind of careful driving on an unfamiliar road at night in winter does not suggest someone in a destabilized state at the wheel. It suggests someone who knew where they were going, or who was being directed carefully toward a specific destination. Jack Madruga did not know that road. Someone on that drive apparently did. A third theory, one that made it into the Yuba County Sheriff's case file in 1994, according to reporting by the Killer Queens podcast, involves Gary Mathias's brother-in-law. The specifics of this theory, as they exist in the public record, are limited. It has been referenced by Dallas Weiher in interviews as something the family has discussed. It has been referenced as a line of inquiry that investigators pursued enough to document. It has not been publicly substantiated with evidence that this telling can verify. It is noted here because it is in the documented record. It is not adopted here because the documented record does not support it beyond its presence in a case file entry from 1994. What the documented record does support, unambiguously, across every source consulted in the preparation of this episode, is a set of specific physical facts that no theory has fully explained. 5 men drove east instead of south. The car was driven carefully up a road the driver had no reason to know. The car was left with its window down and its keys removed in February in the mountains. A man survived alone in a trailer for up to 3 months without lighting a fire or eating the food around him. Another man's shoes were in that trailer. That man has never been found. A gold watch belonging to no one identified sat on the bedside table beside a dying man. The car keys were found in the pocket of a man who had walked 11 miles through a California mountain winter holding them. A father found his son's remains in pieces in the summer forest. These are not theories. These are the documented facts of the case. After 47 years, they remain exactly as strange as they were in 1978. None of them have been explained. None of them have been resolved. None of them fit together into a shape that makes sense. Not fully, not in any version of events that accounts for all of them simultaneously. The Yuba County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit continues to work this case. Brian Bernardis, identified as the cold case investigator for the Yuba County Sheriff's Office in ABC 10's coverage, has described the case in interviews as one that continues to generate interest and inquiry. The case file has been open for 47 years. It has been examined, re-examined, documented, analyzed, and covered by outlets ranging from the Washington Post to A&E to podcasts with audiences in the millions. It has not been solved. Tony Wright, the author of Things Aren't Right, The Disappearance of the Yuba County Five, the most comprehensive book-length treatment of the case, told A&E Crime and Investigation, in a quote that has circulated widely in the true crime coverage of this case, "None of this makes sense." He said that in the context of a book he had spent significant time researching and writing. He said it as a conclusion, not as a starting point. None of this makes sense is where you end up after you have read everything there is to read about the Yuba County Five and followed every documented thread as far as it goes. The uniforms are still the detail that lands hardest. 5 sets of uniforms, laid out on 5 beds, the night the 5 men left for a basketball game they were determined to watch before their own tournament the next morning. They had prepared. They had organized. They had done the specific thing that people do when something matters to them and they want to be ready for it. They did not come home. The uniforms stayed where they were, on the beds. In the bedrooms of 5 men who lived with their families and who called those families when they were going to be late and who had no documented reason on the night of February 24th, 1978, to end up anywhere other than home. What happened between Bears Market in Chico and the Oroville-Quincy Highway in the Plumas National Forest, in the car, on the road, in whatever conversation or event or encounter redirected 5 men from the route they knew to a mountain they didn't, is the question the case has always been. It is still the question. The forest kept one of them. Gary Mathias, Army veteran, Gateway Gators point guard, 25 years old, schizophrenia diagnosis, shoes left in a trailer where his friend died, walked out of the documented record in the winter of 1978 and has not walked back into it. He is listed as missing. The Yuba County Sheriff's Office tip line is active. The case file is open. 47 years of tips and sightings and theories and investigations have not produced him. If the forest kept him, it has not said so. If he walked out of it, he has not said so either. The 5 men left their uniforms on their beds on the night of February 24th, 1978. 4 of them were found in the mountains. 1 was not. The mountain road that took them east still goes east. The forest that received them still stands. The trailer is still out there somewhere in the Plumas National Forest, in the summer used by fire crews, in the winter left to whatever the winter brings. The gold watch has never been claimed. This is a real case, real people. If you know anything about it, the relevant authorities can be contacted through the links in the description.